In this video, I'll be talking about how I make these epic air-to-air fragments by myself using a DJI drone and my autopilot assisted FPV planes, and will demonstrate the process too at the end of the video.
That's hunting.
Many have thought that I always have a buddy along with me to fly a drone while I fly my UAVs, but that is not true. In all these fragments, it has always been me essentially flying two UAVs at once. This idea was already in mind in the early days of the channel and my progress by modifying the planes to record air-to-air footage. And yes, the hustle of bringing two planes to the spot and flying the one after switching channels of the other flying itself required a lot more preparation, timing, and effort. It was also finding and intercepting the target plane through an analog FPV system and maintaining an optimal position with the chase plane during the whole flight for the footage I wanted. But since I got hold of a DJI Mavic Mini 2, these objectives are now much easier to accomplish and the air-to-air videos have been stunning. The main requirements to achieve something like this on your own is at first, having a tuned out FPV plane that you can let go of during automated flight modes. As you will be controlling your quadcopter to capture your FPV plane, it's required of your plane to be stable and tuned out because you won't be flying it for a decent amount of time. The way I ensure this for every build is engaging a 20 to 30 minute return to home loiter. If the plane didn't deviate from its circular flight path and altitude, I'll consider it stable enough for automated flight modes. The second thing to consider is your cruise speed. When you want to keep up with your target plane with your quad, you have to make sure to set a low cruise speed for your FPV plane. If your quadcopter has a maximum speed of 40 kilometers an hour and your FPV plane about 36 to 38 on average, it would result in a hard time to keep up the pace and get the aerial shots you want while draining your battery at its fastest as well. For most of your flights, you'll find yourself capturing your plane from the rear and even outpaced when the plane decides to take a turn while implementing additional throttle to maintain its stability inside the turn. The DJI Mini 2 that I use has a maximum speed of about 50 kilometers an hour in semi-windless weather conditions, and most of my FPV planes cruise along nicely at about 37 kilometers an hour with their lowest throttle input. And this gap allows me to catch up with the target plane much faster and position myself at about every angle I like. And the lesser the cruise speed of your plane, the longer you'd be recording to with your quad because your battery drain will be less trying to keep up with your plane. The third requirement is being advanced with flying your quad at about every axis possible while maintaining forward motion. To capture your planes from the sides and front isn't as easy as it seems because your control input for it changes as your drone's directional axis relative to forward motion changes too. And this is the main part of the flight that is the hardest because you have to keep up the pace, position, coordinated turns, and control your gimbal all at once. There are methods available that show you how you can practice flying forward with your drone pointing at the sides or even backwards, and after mastering those methods, it will be good practice to start capturing your plane from far out and different angles and closing the distance as you're getting better at it. So you've mastered all these things, but where do you start with your first air-to-air mission? Well, that's what I'm going to show you now at the flying field and give a demonstration with my new flying wing build. The first two things is to prepare the drone and controller, set those aside, and then prepare the target plane. And once everything has been set up, I fly the plane first and activate an autonomous flight mode like return to home or a repeating waypoint mission. And once the plane is then up and autonomous, I turn on the drone, and while it's locking its satellites, I keep an eye on the target plane and keep gazing so I won't waste much time and battery trying to find it after takeoff and climb. And here is a screen recording for you guys to observe how I actually do this. The first thing I do after takeoff is switching into the mode in which the quad flies the fastest and then start the initial climb gradually. The UAV itself was about 1.2 kilometers away, already heading back during the ascent of the quadcopter. And the right timing would be that when I would stop and settle at the altitude of the UAV, that I would already see a glimpse of it on my screen or flying past by so that I could chase immediately after it. So after the initial climb, I started taking in my position and waited carefully for the UAV to fly past until I realized it was a bit distant. I saw a glimpse of it and realized it was a bit too far out, so I already started haul-assing after it, kind of like sacrificing my battery or a couple of minutes of good air-to-air footage that I could have got. So what I decided to do was to let the plane fly away, and knowing that the plane would eventually take a right turn, wait for that moment, and once I would see the bank through my screen, immediately haul-ass in that direction as well while facing the quad. And then right at this moment, when I saw the plane bank to the right, I started heading in that same direction as well, but facing the UAV. And at this moment, we all can see that I am actually in pretty good position, and then started going forwards on my sticks, meaning I would close in on the UAV and then started my recording as well.